Net gain, networking, encouragement, and training. Brought to you by Jack of all people trades, helping snow and landscape companies recruit, train, and retain the best employees. Welcome to Net Gain. This is networking, encouragement, training. I'm your host, Evan Tashwire from Jack of all people trades. Got a special guest with me tonight. Kory, introduce yourself to the people.
How you doing? I'm Kory. Worked with Evan on and off here a couple times, but I've been in snow for probably 20 years in some capacity or another. I've been out on my own. I've worked for a management company. I've worked for self-performing companies. I've been at the dumb end of a shovel. And basically, there's not a whole lot I haven't done in this snow world that we all apparently like for some odd reason. Currently at a larger mid-size, I guess you say, landscape company that also does snow. Currently the snow operations manager here. Like I said, we're based in central Jersey. We service 5 counties around here and a little bit of what I call overseas, Staten Island. 100 plus sites of varying sizes, mainly larger retail, industrial, warehousing, things of that nature. Past experiences have been similar sites, similar things, and I love the snow for some odd reason.
No doubt. And that's what we're going to really talk about tonight. So Net Gain, it's networking, encouragement, and training. So, always want to start off with an encouragement. And my encouragement, which actually is going to get into what we talk about a little bit, is really build what I call your pivot muscle. So what I mean by that is understanding that, number one, things will go wrong. Even if you plan for it, things are going to happen. So a good muscle to build is being able to pivot. So being able to pivot with giving grace to yourself, that even though you prepped it happen, being able to pivot to give grace to others, but then also being able to pivot to build that muscle so you don't just freeze and stand there, but you actually are able to say, all right, you know what, that didn't work. It's okay, but we got to do something different and really go with that. So I think being able to, give yourself grace, not have that deer in the headlights look, or even when you get the deer in the headlights look, give yourself grace that, hey, it's okay to have the deer in the headlights look, but it's not okay to stand in the headlights. We got to move. We got to do something different. So anything you'd say to encourage the people with that?
I would say just kind of my attitude on it is whatever it takes to just makes things happen. Have a plan A through Z and then start over again at day one is kind of what I do. And don't be afraid just to make things happen and deal with it later kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yes, I do have a way of just getting things done sometimes and doing that whatever it takes kind of thing, and with consequences or whatever later. I've taken gates apart. I've moved things with chains, just to get stuff done. But don't be afraid to just go out and get it done, whatever it takes. So
100%. So basically with that, pivot muscle is, execution's the name of the game. Like basically identify what needs done and then find a way to do it, obviously safely and ethically. But, as long as you're doing it safe and you're doing it ethical, at that point, move. Like if plan A, like you said, A, B, C didn't work, go to D. And we'll talk a little bit about that tonight because you and I have some history of plans A, B, and C not quite working. So with that, tell the people, who know you maybe know you, don't know me or don't know you, how we worked together. So kind of give a little background just of how we got connected.
So at a management company that we both worked at, I was, boots on the ground, if you will, in the field in Jersey, managing a bunch of sites. And Evan was kind of basically our HR guy, hiring people and helping us find people, staff our sites, and just have people, since he is the people guy. We, have put together crews of people over normal business hours. And then we've also done that 5 a.m. Hey, I need a guy. Can you start making phone calls? And we produced a person who stayed with us all through the season with a literal interview in the middle of a snowstorm in a parking lot. So got the guy in there, got him onboarded and paperwork squared, and stuck him in the machine, showed him the site, and away he went. And he was one of our better operators for the entire season.
And just so the audience knows, that was not plan A, B, or C right there. I think we were
definitely
back out the alphabet by that point.
Yeah, that was like Q or R or something like that. So
something like that.
Yeah, a very interesting time, but that was definitely an example of just putting something together and pivoting to have a not just a warm body, because they are still humans and people, but having a warm body who can operate a machine, just appear out of nowhere. So it definitely worked out.
100%. So yeah, like Kory said, we worked together. We were a company. I was there full time. I had hired him on originally seasonally, then full time field ops manager. So he was boots on the ground. I always said, I was talking to someone the other day where I was hired as a recruiter, but I said, like any small company, if you're good at stuff, they give you more stuff to do. So it became recruiter, then talent management, training, onboarding, basically anything with the HR people. And then since I was recruiting self-perform, I, became the dispatcher, and then eventually was managing kind of the project plans, which was great because I got a lot of experience and breadth I wouldn't have got if I was just recruiting people. And it helped me really understand what I'm recruiting for, the hours, especially when you're dispatching and you see who shows up and who does the job versus who kind of backs out and doesn't fulfill their obligation. It gives you a better sense of like, all right, why did that person fall short? What do I need to look for next time? So you and I had those conversations about, if something did or didn't work, what did we miss here? What did we hit here? I mean, I think we definitely hit more than we missed, but, we learned from our misses too.
Yes. And a couple, I think only at this point now, I think only one of those people that, we hired back then are actually still with me and has followed me to two different companies now to do snow with me. So I was seasonal loader, truck, basis, or whatever it would need. And he was actually here the other night helping set up sites. So finding the right people and you find that one person to actually do stuff is definitely key.
Yeah. So with that, talk to the audience a little bit as we get into the training part of net gain. I always like to have a conversation. Tonight's is really around boots on the ground in snow removal operations. So really going to be picking Kory's brain on some different stuff. And I like to take a few takeaways that we give to the audience, being that I'm a trainer and teacher by trade. So first thing, Kory, how do you prepare for winter operations before the season? So talk a little bit about that.
So obviously it's always changing as to far as what sites are coming in and when, but preparing is how big is the site? What does the site need? What kind of site it is? And then looking at it operationally of, is a skid steer going to work? Is a backhoe better? Is a truck going to be as efficient as a skid steer in this specific site? And they're all changing constantly based off of what resources you have available. So planning what goes where, you have obviously, again, plan A through Z and then start over again. But preparing for it is making sure we have the equipment that we need, the people we're going to need, and then backup resources should something fail or should a person fail. So it's always that plan A through Z thing for me, is making sure I have the first two plans and then having a backup half plan of what's going to happen later on. Physical preparing, checking trucks, checking machines, checking pushers, edges, lines, electrical things, and also having parts on the shelf in our shop to make sure that should something fail, we don't have to bring the machine completely down or the truck completely down. It can be down for an hour and then get fixed almost instantly. Getting stuff, sites set up is planning to get everything out there, all the stuff from our yard out to the sites, who's doing it, what truck are they using to take it there, how much bagged ice melt do we need, how much bulk do we need. All of these things all go into the planning. And then again, of course, having a backup plan.
Yeah, definitely. So a couple things I heard there that I'd say is takeaways is number one, understanding and clarifying levels of service in your contract, because, understanding the level of service, what their expectations is, along with the size and makeup of the site and, hours of operation tells you how you're going to service. So you can't make that plan if you don't know what we talked about earlier, what's the end goal? If you don't know the end goal, if the end goal is like a hospital situation where they want 24/7, as close to bare pavement as you can get, keeping everything open and clear, then that's a different level of service as than, say, a warehouse that might say, hey, keep us open during the day, but on the weekends, don't touch it. Nobody's going in or out. So that's one thing. And then I think a second takeaway you said is definitely talked a lot about documenting who's going to do what, having backups, being prepared. But I think shout out to Scott Lesak, who he's the one that, really said this well about effort doesn't scale, systems do. So I think systems and checklists for how you do stuff in preseason prep really helps you scale, because then, like you said, you can pick up hey, it's time to get trucks ready. Okay, pick up the checklist, who's doing what, or get it up on your phone. Even with certain technologies, you can assign who's doing what. So it actually goes out to each person where it's like, hey, okay, I have to do this, this, and this. or even if it's not that, if you have a centralized Excel doc or centralized even paper sign-off sheet, anything that you have to document who's doing it, that really is
Right.
what helps your company scale, is those checklists and those procedures, so that you can rinse and repeat. And obviously you can make the exception off of if you have to in certain situation, but you
Yeah.
don't have to reinvent the
So
wheel off the simple things.
yeah. So we use site photos here at this company, and I took most of the summer and I made forms for probably almost literally everything that
Nice.
we do here in the fall, and of course through the winter. As we stock our sea box containers we keep on certain sites, there's a form for what did they put in it. They have the list of stuff that has to go there, but then they document it and it goes in there. There's a form for checking in the container itself because they're rentals. There's a form for checking in some of the equipment that we rent. There's a form for checking in the machine before you start using it in a storm. There's a form for checking it out. So there's forms and processes and procedures for literally almost every aspect of our snow operation. So some of them need some tweaking as we go through and use them. I mean, I made them July, and now here we are in November, and some of them need some tweaking of some orders of things and stuff like that, but the process is there. The same with after an event, we have a form and a policy and a checklist and a procedure to restock our containers, refill the machines with diesel fuel and DEF fluid, and etc. There's a process and procedure for everything. So Scott is definitely onto something with that one. So.
And you said you were able to throw all that in site photos so like everybody can access that.
Yeah, so the form was made. There's a form builder section of it, and we give, depending on the site, it gets attached to the site, and then depending on who's going to be using the form, they have access to it as well. So.
Okay. No, that's really dope. And that's a way to, again, use technology, attach it to your site, because anything that you can kind of streamline and attach together makes things easier. Mm-hmm. But kind of transitioning, talk about how do you motivate a team during the storm? So when it's going, whether it's a long hours, it's tough conditions, how do you motivate that team and keep them motivated?
So me personally, I am literally on the phone for almost an entire event, checking in on people. Motivating them is like, hey, it's almost over. But motivating them like, hey, you're doing a good job. This looks great. This section that you cleared, or this section that you shoveled or salted or whatever, you did a great job. And then just kind of backing that up with like, hey, can I bring you anything? I'll buy my guys coffee, snacks, water, whatever they need. I'll bring it to them because I'm out and about out there with them in the crappy weather. And I know how it is. So, whatever I can do to make their job slightly easier, I will try and do it and just keep them staying, checking in at like a 4-hour, 8-hour, 12-hour, 16-hour mark of like, hey, are you good? Do you need to go home? Do you want to get out of the machine, go sit in your car, your truck for a little while? Do you want to, park the truck you're in for a little bit? Like, it's fine as long as we're like kind of up to date and not behind the storm, but, where we should be. If they need a break, it's knock yourself out. So I'd rather you go take a 20-minute power nap than crash machine through a building. But, just reminding them like, hey, you're doing a good job. The work you're doing matters and we appreciate you. So.
Yeah. So a lot of what I heard there is definitely, like you said, recognizing them, and not just recognizing at the end of the storm, but recognizing throughout, because that's best practice from an HR people side on recognition is, as people do good things, like, for example, on a software install project, you don't just say good job when it's done. You say good
Right.
job along the way when you develop. Like, same thing with, we'll put it in operations, those forms that you're building. You don't just say good job when we're done with the season. You say, hey, good job building that form, or hey, I noticed you got those trucks prepped today. Great job on that. Same thing in storm, recognizing. And I think the big takeaway I'd say that I think you encapsulated well was be there with your people. Be in the field with them, be willing to, get them that coffee, that water, see if they need that break, check in, and just be present with them. Understand,
Right.
empathize with what's going on, do what you can to help and adjust, pitch in if you can in certain situations. And also, I think be there. I'd even encourage anybody on here, not just those who are in the field, but even those in the office. Great story I heard Steve Smythe was sharing when he was on here about people in the office, would prepare like sandwiches and go bags for the team so that they could swing by the shop and grab stuff, or somebody could come by and grab them. Like in your situation, you could come by and grab them and go around and hit all the sites. So even while they weren't there in that way, they're still there. And I think be there too, even if you're on the dispatcher support side in the office, be there with the right attitude too. You know what I mean? Knowing that your people in the field are, I want to say killing themselves, but straining. They're struggling. It's long, it's hard, it's thankless, and you've got to be there with that attitude to support them. So I think that be there is a great way to motivate the team in the storm. Anything you'd add to that?
Yeah, no, I mean the support that we have in office everywhere I've been has always been good. They back us up on the administrative side and making sure things get documented correctly. So obviously, yes, we can build because we don't all do this for fun, but make sure we can build properly, correctly, and as soon as possible to get that in. So the support from the office is good to have some people that back you up the way they're supposed to.
100%. And like you said, I think it's important that you get that billing in, because obviously people remember pain, but people forget pain. I'm sure anybody in snow can attest. It's like when it hits, that pain of that season's there, but you get a season or two or even a couple months down the road, people kind of forget about that pain a little bit. But when it's like you did a good job and got them out of that jam, then they're
Right.
more like, okay, you know what? This was something that I really wanted to do. So definitely.
Administration, back office stuff, answering the phone at 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning with a question, or if we have a problem with, something technical I can't do in the truck on the computer, is super helpful on both sides, operationally and obviously for the customer. So
Yeah,
yeah,
100%.
one other thing too I want to add to, like, too, with supporting the people that are in the machines or are in the trucks, is go and see them. I've actually offered more than once, like, go find a guy in the machine, like, here, get out of the machine, go sit in my truck and take a nap. I'll get in the machine because it still needs to happen, but he needs a break, and I don't get to plow much snow anymore, which is, kind of sad.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great takeaway for leaders is, like you said, be willing to pitch in, be willing to say, hey, take a power nap in my truck. I'll pitch in if when you can do that. Another thing I'd add from the office side, because, my experience is on the HR recruiting side. I would say to anybody in an office role in a snow company, definitely take some ride alongs with your team. And to the flip side, in the ops team, offer those ride alongs. I know my first season, that was really helpful. A couple different people took me on ride alongs, one during a plowing event, one during a salting event, and to be able to hear the action, to see what was happening, not just teach about it from an academic standpoint, but to see, okay, this is what it looks like in action. Okay, when I say this in training, this is what it actually looks like in the field. So okay, maybe you can't calibrate that as much. Maybe this isn't as an exact science, but you still
Right.
see all the different things that happen. And I would say to anybody in that office role too, when you do that ride along, like, have your notebook and ask questions, like ask why you're doing things, write things down. Given the ride alongs, I'd say do them, start with a salting event, start with something maybe lighter that, is more routine. But if you get a chance to get people out, definitely have the right people do it, and obviously put them with the friendly people. We don't want to put them with the neighborhood crowd. Not that you have too many, but want to encourage them to come back. You know what I mean?
Yep. And
Last thing
see
we're
how quickly things can change. You can go from everything is quiet, dare I say that word, to everything breaks at the same time on Sunday at 2 o'clock in the morning when you can't get parts. So
Yeah. And that's another thing you can see is that, so kind of led right where I was going to go with the last point here is, so talk about what do you do when you have those moments where things break, you can't get parts, something goes haywire, give me a good haywire story that you've had to deal with. Not that you've ever had any, but I'm sure you've had the time.
well, nothing ever breaks. I mean, it was right before a storm where we had overnight parts from Canada for a metal press, so there was that. But as far as in a storm, things just break, and that goes back to the preparing of stuff. Do I have another salter motor on the shelf? Do I have hoses already made for hydraulic lines on a plow? Do I have an extra spinner? Do I have an extra set of headlights? Do I have an extra plow? Do I have an extra push box? Whatever it may be. As far as stories, I mean, I probably have 100 of them or more, but just making something happen out of nothing is definitely amazing sometimes. I mean, there's one when I was on my own, first plow down at the first site I tried to do, popped the hose. There was no stove banks to short chain it to get it somewhere. I plowed snow probably for about 15 miles from the site to a repair shop to get it fixed because that was the only option. There was no jack available. There was no snow banks to run it up into because it was just started to be go time. So making things happen out of nothing. So
Yeah. So just like you said,
I feel like I
acting
don't
is
have
really
any good stories, but I mean I do. I just can't really think of one. So
Yeah. I'll share the one that you kind of alluded to earlier. Was it's the first storm you and I had worked together when I was dispatching for your sites in Jersey. And I remember going in, we had a very full roster. Like I had probably every slot filled and then like a couple people back here. And I'd even been interviewing, which pro tip for hiring operators, over hire, always interview if somebody calls and is interested, even if you're quote unquote fully staffed. If you have two shifts or whatever, keep interviewing because you never know who won't pick up the phone or get sick or fall off. So always make those calls. And, so I was building what I thought was our bench at that point. And I remember I started making calls and one guy doesn't pick up after multiple calls, and this was people I had confirmed availability with weekly, couple days before the storm, like had been corresponding with. Two or three guys don't pick up, so I'm going down the chain. Then I'm getting into some of the guys that we had kind of on the backup list, and I'm going through everybody I've had contact with that that you and I had interviewed by that point. We finally get to fully staffed, or so I thought. And then one of the guys calls me. I don't even know if you remember this. Calls me like on his way there. He's like, "Yeah, it's too snowy. I'm not going out." And I'm like, "Really, dude? Like, really?" So
remember
then,
that guy now you said.
yeah. So I remember that was probably about 4 a.m. He gave me that call because I dispatched him overnight. And I had checked because I had like a little down window after I thought I got everyone out where I was just checking Indeed. And I saw a resume happen to pop in there. And so Kory's like, "We need someone in this machine." I'm like, "Well, somebody applied at 3 a.m. So I'm going to give this person a ring and see if they up." So sure enough, they were awake. And I was like, "Hey, you want to work?" I'm like, again, that was about plan Q, not the first thing I advised, but I told him, I'm like, I gave him a quick phone interview just to kind of vet that he generally knew what he was talking about. And he's like, "Yeah, I plowed, I've ran this, da da da." I'm like, "All right, here's where you're going. I'm going to talk to my guys." I called Kory on the way. I said, "I can't promise you anything than other than what he told me on the phone. And, here's his resume, but, vet him real quick, see if he can run, even if you put him on the easy stuff." And he worked with us, the whole season from that point?
Yeah. Yep. And the following season too.
Oh, wow. Yep. So the 5 a.m. hire, plan Q really worked in that situation.
Yeah. So another haywire one is a company fail at one site that got about 36 inches of snow, made 2 phone calls and mobilized an entire different company from a different part of the state. Low boys, deck over trailers, the whole nine. They just rolled in, 4 trucks deep, 5 machines, and they just felt like the stuff just appeared. We got it done and site open by 6 a.m. and that had started probably about 2:30 in the morning.
You mean the whole like
the first 2 phone calls of, "Hey, I need you
to
load up your stuff onto your lowboy and your deck over trailer, drive an hour south into a snowstorm where there's 3 feet of snow and make something happen." And they did. So
yeah. Now, was this a company you had any kind of relationship with, or was this a cold out the blue call?
It was a company that I just met, and they did not do anything yet, but I knew they had the stuff, and they answered the phone. So
okay, well, that's
and they like, "Hey, we like you. We'll come work for you." Obviously, there was dollars involved in it, but they made it happen, and they showed up, and it saved a lot of people's butts. So
yeah, no, that's a value of relationship building and going that extra mile for people. And I think that's a takeaway too, is like go that extra mile for people because you never know when you're going to need them to go that extra mile for you. So yep. I think those relationships are really important. As we close here, Kory, anything you'd say before I open the network time here?
I guess leading into the networking part of it is to network with people that are not in your primary service area, because you may be getting snow and need them, and they're not getting anything and they're willing to come to bat for you. Is to know people and build a relationship with them so they can come help you, or you can go help them if needed. So, and just talking to them constantly so they don't forget about you, or you don't forget about them. I know people from Massachusetts to Maryland and Delaware and Virginia and stuff that I know I could call if I ever needed, provided they're available to do so. They would come help me. So, and I would definitely.
No doubt.
So leading into your networking part is talk to people. There's so much networking available in this business between Simon stuff, the stuff that Storks does, the stuff you're doing, and all the other networking stuff. I encourage people to go talk to people, shake somebody's hand. Some people look intimidating, but they're the nicest people in the world. So
100%.
And we're all in the same crazy business here, and knowing people is definitely helpful.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, this has been Jack of All People Trades, Net Gain, Networking, Encouragement, Training. If you like this podcast, make sure you subscribe on all your major podcast channels. If you are a snow or a landscape company that's looking to hire, retain, and train the best people, definitely hit me up. We can have a talk. Appreciate y'all. I'm out.